On January 6, 2021, Donald Trump delivered a gripping speech that motivated his supporters to storm the Capitol in protest of the presidential election results. His speech has been analyzed by academia all over the world, members of the U.S. Congress, and many members of the U.S. judicial branch. The results of their analysis are nearly unanimous. Donald Trump incited an insurrection with his speech. Here are some examples from two members of the U.S. judicial branch.
An understanding had developed between Trump and some of his most extreme supporters that his encouragement, for example, to fight, was not metaphorical, referring to a political fight, but rather as a literal call to violence against those working to ensure the transfer of presidential power. While Trump's ellipse speech did mention peaceful conduct in his command to march to the Capitol, the overall tenor was that to save the democracy and the country the attendees needed to fight.
Mr. Trump told the crowd, a crowd of his supporters that he had remarked to advisers the night before was angry, that the election had been stolen and the country would no longer exist if this purported crime were not stopped, and that the discovery of fraud licensed them to go by very different rules. Although Mr. Trump at one point also told his supporters to peacefully and patriotically make their voices heard, he used the word fight more than 10 times in the speech before concluding by directing his supporters to march to the Capitol to give allied members of Congress the kind of pride and boldness they need to take back our country. He also told the angry crowd that, if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
I decided to perform a rhetorical data analysis on this speech to study the rhetoric that was used to incite this insurrection. What I discovered was truly fascinating and unique in that my conclusion was that the speech wasn't motivational enough to incite an insurrection because it was boring as shit. But first, let's analyze the usage of the word fight within his speech, as Trump's numerous accusers have consistently referenced as, quote, "We fight like hell, and if we don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore." The word fight can be used in a number of ways. Here are 3 ways that could make sense within the typical context of a political speech. Number 1, to engage in violent struggle. Number 2, to quarrel or argue. Number 3, to struggle or campaign against something. I isolated all the fight statements in my analysis here and in the speech video itself. Let's take a look at the video and identify how exactly he is using the word fight in each statement.
And Rudy, you did a great job. He's got guts. You know what? He's got guts, unlike a lot of people in the Republican Party. He's got guts. He fights. He fights. For years, Democrats have gotten away with election fraud and weak Republicans, and that's what they are. There's so many weak Republicans, and we have great ones. Jim Jordan and some of these guys, they're out there fighting. The House guys are fighting. But it's incredible. Unbelievable what we have to go through. What we have to go through, and you have to get your people to fight. And if they don't fight, we have to primary the hell out of the ones that don't fight. You primary them, we're gonna let you know who they are. I could already tell you, frankly. Republicans are constantly fighting like a boxer with his hands tied behind his back. It's like a boxer. And we want to be so nice. We want to be so respectful of everybody, including bad people. And we're going to have to fight much harder. And we were going to sit home and watch a big victory, and everybody had us down for a victory. It was going to be great. And now we're out here fighting. But you know, it used to be that they'd argue with me, I'd fight. So I'd fight, they'd fight, I'd fight, they'd fight, boop, you'd believe me, you'd believe them. Somebody comes out, you know, they had their point of view, I had my point of view. But you'd have an argument. Now what they do is they go silent. It's called suppression. And that's what happens in a communist country. That's what they do. They suppress. You don't fight with them anymore unless it's a bad story. If they have a little bad story about me, they make it 10 times worse and it's a major headline. With your help over the last 4 years, we built the greatest political movement in the history of our country, and nobody even challenges that. I say that over and over, and I never get challenged by the fake news, and they challenge almost everything we say. But our fight against the big donors, big media, big tech, and others is just getting started. But I said, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong. Can't have happened. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
The last statement is more ambiguous than the others. However, when analyzed within the context with all the other statements, the reasonable assumption is that Trump is not advocating for a violent call to action, since none of the other statements did. As further evidence, let's look at a short clip of all the policy prescriptions that Trump is calling on his audience to rally and fight for.
And you have to get your people to fight. And if they don't fight, we have to primary the hell out of the ones that don't fight. And we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women. We have come to demand that Congress do the right thing and only count the electors who have been lawfully slated. Lawfully slated. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. And we got to get rid of the weak Congress people, the ones that aren't any good, the Liz Cheneys of the world. We got to get rid of them. We got to get rid. So today, in addition to challenging the certification of the election, I'm calling on Congress and the state legislatures to quickly pass sweeping election reform. With your help, we will finally pass powerful requirements for voter ID. We will also require proof of American citizenship in order to vote in American elections. We will ban ballot harvesting and prohibit the use of unsecured drop boxes to commit rampant fraud. These drop boxes are fraudulent. We will stop the practice of universal unsolicited mail-in balloting. We will clean up the rules that ensure that every single person who casts a vote is a citizen of our country, a resident of the state in which they vote, and their vote is cast in a lawful and honest manner. We will restore the vital civic tradition of in-person voting on Election Day so that voters can be fully informed when they make their choice. We will finally hold big tech accountable, and if these people had courage and guts, they would get rid of Section 230. Together, we will drain the Washington swamp, and we will clean up the corruption in our nation's capital. So we're going to walk down Pennsylvania Avenue. I love Pennsylvania Avenue. And we're going to the Capitol, and we're going to try and give, the Democrats are hopeless. They're never voting for anything. Not even one vote. But we're going to try and give our Republicans, the weak ones, because the strong ones don't need any of our help. We're going to try and give them the kind of pride, boldness that they need to take back our country. So let's walk down Pennsylvania Avenue.
Now on to my primary premise that Trump's speech was boring as shit. First, let's look at the makeup of the line of reasoning within the speech. As you can see, the identify issues line of reasoning is much larger than the connect values. Connect values is typically the highest in motivational speeches. Let's look at the argument claims. Fact claims at 60%, value claims at 27%. Again, you'd expect the value claims to be greater than the fact claims. Whenever I compare fact claims to value claims, I'm reminded of that Simon Sinek TED Talk from 2009. You remember that one? People don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. In that scenario, fact claim represents what you do, and value claim represents why you do it. Digging deeper into the fact claims, you'll notice that the amount of empirical fact claims is more than double the amount of theoretical fact claims. These empirical fact claims essentially amount to Trump listing out evidence of election fraud, and listening to a long list of empirical evidence is really boring. Trump was aware of this. In fact, he mentioned it a few times in his speech. Here are some examples. Check this out.
I could name 24 of them. I won't bore you with it. Oh, really? Well, I'm going to read you pages. I hope you don't get bored listening to it. Promise? Don't get bored listening to it. All those hundreds of thousands of people back there. All these people, don't get bored. Don't get angry at me because you're going to get bored because it's so much.
Can you imagine? I have a dream. I won't go into too much detail, though. I don't want to bore you. And finally, I'll just leave you with a quick edit to highlight Trump's recurring battle exhortation.
We will not take it anymore. We're not going to let it happen. Not going to let it happen. We're just not going to let that happen, and we're not going to stand for that. And we can't let that happen. Can't let it happen.
Remember, guys, to subscribe and hit the like button. Bye.